Hey there, Jordan Chariton live. It is Monday, March 14th. The year is 2022. Hope everybody's having a good day. Had a nice weekend. Is staying safe in these tough times. Big show. So do me a favor, smash the like button. It's the thumbs up button right under the live stream. The more people that press the like button, the more people that will see this very live stream. Share this live stream too. And super chats are always welcome. I'll read that towards the end. We got a big show, and there's one story I did not fit in the headline that's really, really important. Obviously, we're going to talk Russia-Ukraine. MSNBC's just, it's not shocking, but warmongering. No wonder a majority of Americans polled think Biden is not doing enough on Ukraine and Russia. So we're going to have their warmongering, specifically Joe Scarborough's warmongering. We're also going to get into President Manchin, who strikes again in blocking anything that might stave off planetary destruction. And at around 5:30, we're going to have a guest from Michigan. There's a massive air pollution catastrophe in Michigan. We all know about Flint in the water. We know about PFAS in the water. But there's been an air pollution disaster and corruption revolving that air pollution, and the state of Michigan's environmental department helping to cover it up. So we're going to be talking to a guest about that. It's in the Kalamazoo area. But it's not just Michigan, folks, in terms of air pollution, and a lot of factories in the United Corporations of America that are causing air pollution and causing a lot of people to get sick. So we'll have that in a little bit. Also, a quick announcement, still ironing out the details, but it looks like next week I will be in Florida, the state of Florida, on the ground reporting. If you don't know, in addition to Ron DeSantis trying to be a mini-me of Trump, and clearly angling for to run in 2024. Right now, he's pushing something that is being called the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida, which would make it, they're trying to make it seem like it is essentially just preventing any talk of sexuality, children in kindergarten through third grade. If you actually look into the bill, it's a lot more than that. And I am going to be in Florida covering that, talking to LGBTQ activists, students, transgender individuals, but also trying to cover other stories in Florida as well. So that will be next week. Haven't been on the ground in a while. I need it. Tell you the truth. If I'm not on the ground after a while, I get a little flat. I love doing live streams, obviously covering news of the day. I got to get back out there. So looking forward to covering that down in Florida and some other stories. So if you're in Florida, probably going to be in the Tampa, St. Pete, Orlando area. So if you know of stories there, working class, I know gas is through the roof in Florida, like in many other places. I also know that inflation is above the national average in Florida right now. So if you're in Florida, email us, info@statuscoup.com. Specifically, if you're in kind of St. Pete, Tampa, Orlando, I'm probably going to stay around that area, maybe go elsewhere too. If you got an economic story or a story about the working class, please let me know. Info@statuscoup.com. So, and smash that like button, share this live stream. Before we get to Joe Scarborough's warmongering, I want to give you some updates as much as I can on what's going on there in Russia, Ukraine. Obviously, I'm not there, so we have to take everything with a grain of salt. There's a lot of propaganda going on both sides. Colin, if we could show the mayor that was supposedly kidnapped, that's the video of this mayor from Ivan Fedorov was kidnapped. According to Antoine Garashenko, Fedorov refused to cooperate with the Russian military occupying the city. He was detained at the city crisis center where he was in charge of the city's life support. Colin, do we have that Twitter video? So there you see this center, and right there is Russian military bringing out this mayor, and they have apparently installed a puppet mayor that is pro-Russian. So that's one item that's pretty scary. Then you have a Fox News reporter has been hospitalized. This came out today. If we could play this clip.
An hour ago, we had an alert, and we've got an update for you now. This is from the Chief Executive Officer of Fox News, Suzanne Scott, who sent a message to the network today saying earlier today, our correspondent Benjamin Hall was injured while news gathering outside of Kiev in Ukraine. We have a minimal level of details right now, but Ben is hospitalized, and our teams on the ground are working to gather additional information as the situation quickly unfolds. The safety of our entire team of journalists in Ukraine and the surrounding regions is our top priority and of the utmost importance. This is a stark reminder for all journalists who are putting their lives on the line every day to deliver the news from the war zone. We will update everyone as we know more. Please keep Ben and his family in your prayers.
So as of going live, he's been hospitalized. I know nothing more. Sadly, we know that a journalist has been killed. Another journalist has actually been killed. Brent Renaud. This is from the New York Times. Brent Renaud, an award-winning American filmmaker and journalist, was killed in Ukraine on Sunday while reporting in a suburb of the capital, Kyiv. Mr. Renaud, he was 50. He had worked for the New York Times, HBO, NBC. The Ukrainian authorities said he was killed in Irpin, a suburb that has been the site of intense shelling by Russia. So it is, whether it be Fox News, so obviously you know what I think of, or other journalists. This is serious stuff. Journalists, whether it be with Fox or elsewhere, are literally risking their lives. Also, independent journalists, filmmakers, documentary filmmakers, they are risking their lives in a war. You know, very sad to hear about that former New York Times journalist. And, you know, we wish the best, obviously, to the Fox News reporter or any other journalists there that are in the line of fire. And we're about to get to MSNBC, but what is being called a Russian airstrike hit a base. This is from CBS, Colin. Russian airstrike hits a base in western Ukraine near the Polish border, killing 35. So this was about 12 miles from the border of Poland and Ukraine. Waves of Russian missiles pounded a military training base close to Ukraine's western border with NATO member Poland, killing 35 people. The strike followed Russian threats to target foreign weapon shipments that are helping Ukrainian fighters. So this is noteworthy because now you have Russia basically saying, if there are shipments, we're going to take those out too. And that's very close to a NATO country. So I don't know. We all know NATO is no innocent wallflower. The media does not want to report on NATO's role in all this over the last decades. NATO broke promises to the Soviet Union after the Soviet Union fell. But NATO says if a NATO country, you attack one NATO country, attack all of us. So the fact that missiles are being fired so close to Poland is that's definitely an escalation for sure. That's definitely an escalation. And if that hits in Poland, I mean, unless NATO is going to make an exception, which I doubt it, they probably, including the U.S., might act against Russia, which could start World War III. And now we know Russia is also asking China, one of its close allies, for support on the ground. I also wanted to show this, Colin. This is the Kevin Gotstola tweet, which has mention from The Guardian, because this hasn't gotten a lot of attention, but The Guardian reported, if you have that screenshot, Colin, it's from the tweet. If you could just show The Guardian, Kevin Gotstola's tweet. I will send it to you again. 1 second, folks. Smash that like button, by the way. Got a good viewership. Smash the like button, share this to more people so we can get it out there to even more people. You got it, Colin?
I'm pulling it up right now. 1 second.
Okay. So this actually was The Guardian had a blurb about what Reuters was reporting. I don't know why I can't find it on Reuters. I don't know if they took it down or something, but Reuters actually reported that Ukrainian President Zelensky basically called out the United States fairly directly. Here we go. I'll read you the statement. The U.S. has said it's willing to take diplomatic steps to help the Ukrainian government, reports Reuters. A State Department spokesperson made the comments on Saturday after the Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, said the West should be more involved in negotiations to end the war. Quote, if there are diplomatic steps that we could take that the Ukrainian government believes would be helpful, we're prepared to take them, the spokesperson said. Quote, we are working to put the Ukrainians in the strongest possible negotiating position, including by increasing pressure on Russia, by imposing severe costs, and by providing security assistance to help Ukrainians defend themselves. So they didn't put the exact quote that Zelensky said, but they are saying Zelensky had said the West should be more involved in negotiations to end the war. And briefly looking around today, this was thought to be that essentially the U.S. is not emboldening Ukraine in its negotiations, whatever few negotiations they've had with Russia, to offer Russia scaling back the severe sanctions. So that's what that is about, which makes you start to wonder. I mean, not trying to be cynical, but got to be cynical. Does Biden and the U.S. want to end this war quickly? Because his poll numbers have bounced up significantly after the State of the Union and the start of this war. I mean, overall, up 8 points to 47%. Ukraine handling up 18 points to 52%. Coronavirus pandemic handling now up 8 points to 55%. Economic handling up 8 points to 45%. So in that statement, the U.S. says, oh, yeah, we will be happy to aid Ukraine in diplomatic efforts with Russia. But you have the Ukrainian president basically saying, yeah, we need the United States to help us more in diplomatic efforts, because it was said for a while before Russia invaded, the United States wasn't seriously trying to negotiate with Russia. So all of this, and there's some other news items, but all of this lead to, I want to get to MSNBC. Joe Scarborough is obviously a conservative, but there's a lot of people on MSNBC pushing this kind of warmongering. And its direct connection to why over half of Americans think Biden hasn't done enough. And frankly, I'm no Biden fan if you watch this channel, but I think he's done a lot. I don't even agree with everything he's done, but he has done a lot. But polling shows over half of Americans think he hasn't done enough. I wonder why. I wonder why they don't think he did enough. But Colin, let's play the first clip from Scarborough, which was actually from 5 or 6 days ago, because we're going to show one clip from Joe Scarborough on Morning Joe, the cocktail circuit. They've never known a war they don't love. And then we're going to show the evolution to 5 days later. Let's play clip number one.
See this weekend, Fred Kemp with the Atlantic Council. Many others are saying Biden and the West have done an admirable job. The economic sanctions are extraordinary. The flooding of weapons across the Polish-Ukrainian border, extraordinary. But now the war's moving to a new phase. Americans and Europeans are seeing war crimes committed on their television sets 24 hours a day. You saw in the West a couple of useful idiots starting to talk about Ukrainians having chemical weapons, which was a precursor to a Russian general saying that they had those weapons, which, of course, the intel community is rightly saying is going to be Russia's excuse to use chemical weapons. Does the Biden administration, forgive me, this is going to sound condescending, but it's too early for me to figure out any other way to say it. Does the Biden administration understand that when Americans and Europeans see 5-year-old children choked to death by Putin's chemical weapons that we're going to have to go in? Do they understand that there is no holding back, that we're going to have to take a far more aggressive approach?
Administration officials, Joe, recognize that we're teetering on the edge of potentially a far more dangerous phase of this war.
So that was actually the second clip I wanted to play. We'll play the first one in a little bit. But do you see there that Joe Scarborough, and I've heard this on MSNBC, and I've also heard this on CNN. Why are you talking about chemical weapons right now? Do you have any evidence other than your unnamed CIA military spooks that come on that leak things to MSNBC and CNN? What evidence do you have that Putin's going to release chemical weapons in Ukraine? None. You have probably the CIA floating it, the Pentagon floating it. And why are they floating it? Is there any incentive? By the way, I condemn what Putin has done in Russia. This is an illegal invasion, and Putin should be condemned. Frankly, it's very interesting. You know, Tucker Carlson on Fox News, he always loves war. He loved the Iraq War, Afghanistan, never said peep about the United States committing genocide on Yemen. But all of a sudden, he's anti-war when it comes to Russia and Putin. That's just very interesting. There's been reports that Russia is feeding its state television, telling them, show more Tucker Carlson. But hey, if he's legitimately anti-war now, great. But it's just interesting that he's against this war. But this Joe Scarborough, and this is an intentional thing that Scarborough was doing and CNN has done. They're starting to bring up chemical weapons. If you heard in that clip, he says, you know, does Joe Biden understand that if images come up of a 5-year-old, you know, gasping for air, that we're going to have to do more? Well, number one, you're creating propaganda to elicit fear in your viewership. Most of the MSNBC viewership, as like CNN, Fox News, are 60 and up. No disrespect, because we have some 60 and up viewers who are progressive and don't buy this bullshit. But most of them grew up in, you know, kind of the Cold War era and the stoking of fear with all this. So it's remarkable to me, not remarkable because Joe Scarborough was totally pushing the Iraq war and every other war known to man. He doesn't care about the U.S. Helping Saudi Arabia wage genocide on the people of Yemen, war on Somalia, I mean, many other places, Afghanistan, sanctions crippling and starving people in Venezuela, Iran, even Russia. Doesn't care about any of that. But it seems to me, whether intentionally or not, they're kind of starting to float this chemical weapon stuff to instill more fear in their audience, to escalate tensions, to almost poke Biden to do even more. What more do you want him to do? Seriously, what more do you want him to do? Crippling sanctions that, by the way, are going to affect the Russian oligarchs that they're meant for last. It's going to hit the people of Russia first, working people, not the oligarchs. Obviously, we're feeling it at the pump here. Prices are through the roof in California and the East Coast and Hawaii. A lot of that, by the way, is the fossil fuel companies price gouging because they don't have to charge this much. So it's just basically without saying, Biden, go to war with Russia. This is the subtle manufacturing consent for Biden to go to war with Russia. And Colin, we kind of accidentally flipped those two clips. Could you show the first clip that I wanted to show, not the one that you just showed? But this is Biden. This is Scarborough like 5 or 6 days ago.
It's been a one-way street over the past 15, 20 years. People have been saying, oh, we've cornered Vladimir Putin time and time and time again. One administration, Mika, after another administration has tried to give Vladimir Putin the benefit of the doubt. George W. Bush talking about looking into his eyes, seeing into his soul, and he's a good guy and we can do business with him. You have the Obama administration talking about the reset. You have Barack Obama, who caught hell for whispering in a hot mic saying, hey, after the election, I can do more. You have Donald Trump, who basically tried to dismantle NATO for Vladimir Putin, who held up defensive weapons to the Ukrainians, trying to blackmail them, going to Helsinki, basically doing everything but completely capitulating, talking about actually undermining NATO every step of the way. The fears that if he got reelected again, it would be undermined again. Of course, this has caused major problems. At the same time, we have time and time again underestimated Vladimir Putin. So if there is anybody in the White House right now concerned that these sanctions may be too tough on a guy who is committing war crimes every day and every night in Ukraine, you know what? wipe that dust off of your jacket, off of your shoulder. That's just absolutely ridiculous. Listen, I have been saying from the very beginning that we have to understand how Putin, how he looks at the world, that he feels like he's been hemmed in by NATO for years. We have to help Vladimir Putin get out of the corner. We have to work with him to provide an off-ramp. He doesn't want that. He wants to reconstitute the Soviet Union. So what do? Do we not pick up the phone and call? No. We need to continue engaging actively and always be willing to work with him to get that off-ramp. But this idea that sanctions may be too.
So 5-6 days ago, and by the way, smash that like button. We got almost 400 people watching. Smash that like button right under the live stream and share this live stream. So 5-6 days ago, talking about an off-ramp. Let's replay the clip from today.
Started to see this weekend, Fred Kemp with the Atlantic Council. Many others are saying Biden and the West have done an admirable job. The economic sanctions are extraordinary. The flooding of weapons across the Polish-Ukrainian border, extraordinary. But now the war's moving to a new phase. Americans and Europeans are seeing war crimes committed on their television sets 24 hours a day. You saw in the West a couple of useful idiots starting to talk about Ukrainians having chemical weapons, which was a precursor to a Russian general saying that they had those weapons, which, of course, the intel community is rightly saying is going to be Russia's excuse to use chemical weapons. Does the Biden administration, forgive me, this is going to sound condescending, but it's too early for me to figure out any other way to say it. Does the Biden administration understand that when Americans and Europeans see 5-year-old children choked to death by Putin's chemical weapons, that we're going to have to go in? Do they understand that there is no holding back, that we're going to have to take a far more aggressive approach?
Okay.
Administration officials, Joe, recognize that we're teetering.
So 5-6 days ago, off-ramp. And to hell with you, White House people who actually care about the sanctions actually affecting people in the people of Russia. That's Joe Biden's, Joe Scarborough doesn't care about that. So it went from off-ramp to, well, the intel community is saying Putin might use chemical weapons because we listen to the intel community 1,000%. They're never wrong. They have no ulterior motive to float this. So does Biden understand if we start seeing images of a 5-year-old choking to death, we're going to have to go in? And you wonder, Colin, if we could show, majority in the U.S. don't think Biden has acted forcefully enough versus Russia. This is a poll from CBS. More than half of Americans believe President Biden hasn't acted forcefully enough against Moscow for invading Ukraine and would support a no-fly zone over the war-torn nation, a poll showed Sunday. Americans, by 69%, believe that Russia will move to attack other European countries after Ukraine, while 31% think he'll stop with Ukraine, the CBS poll showed. If Russia attacks another NATO country, 72% of Americans favor a U.S. military response, while 27% oppose it, the survey found. Well, I could tell you from covering politics, most of these polls are skewed heavily towards older people. No disrespect to any older folks that are watching. It's more older people are polled, I would say 50 and up. And what kind of media do, for the most part, not all, for the most part, what kind of media do those older people, let's say 60 and up, consume? CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, New York Times, Washington Post, et cetera, who is floating chemical weapons, talking about 5-year-olds choking to death. And let's be clear, Vladimir Putin is a terrible person. Vladimir Putin, whatever you want to say, I have given caveats that Russia has had legitimate concerns about NATO expansion, but that does not condone an illegal war and killing innocent people. If you're anti-war, you're anti-war, period. And you shouldn't be defending Putin invading Ukraine, even if Russia has legitimate concerns. But this is only going to escalate. And by the way, if we could show Colin that tweet, this is from the no-fly zone polls. This is also from CBS. So CBS YouGov asked Americans what they believe as far as a no-fly zone. They asked it two ways, and it's quite striking. It's quite striking the way they worded the polls. If you have that, Colin. It's from yeah. So no-fly zone over Ukraine. 59% of Americans support it. 41% oppose it. But then when asked, do you support a no-fly zone if it's viewed as an act of war? 38% support. 62% oppose. You know what that tells me? And good on CBS and YouGov for actually asking it the other way. The media is not actually explaining to its viewers what a no-fly zone actually would cause, what it would be. Because if the United States does a no-fly zone, that is launching World War III, and I don't think that's too dramatic. So you don't really hear that when it's discussed on CNN, MSNBC, other major media, that a no-fly zone, and then they shifted to, oh, well, what about a partial no-fly zone? There's no such thing. If you start a no-fly zone over Russian airspace or Ukrainian airspace, that is going to be Putin's excuse. And then you are literally not poking the bear, but hitting the bear of a nuclear armed power. So, yeah, I got to say, the media, I was wrong. I didn't think Russia was going to invade Ukraine. A broken clock is right twice a day. The U.S. intelligence that said Russia was going to invade Ukraine in this case was right. That doesn't mean the U.S. intelligence and the CIA apparatus doesn't have incentive to further escalate this war. We know Biden's poll numbers are up. Frankly, we know the defense contractors are doing swimmingly well right now. And we know that CNN and MSNBC's ratings are way up after Donald Trump and Donald Trump leaving the building has really hurt their ratings. So I got to say, it's not a small thing. Somebody said, Jordan, you're stretching. No, I don't think I'm stretching. It's not a small thing when very influential. And you might say, well, who watches MSNBC anymore? Well, a lot of older people do. A lot of voters do. A lot of liberals do. And when you have MSNBC's signature hosts in the morning, one of their most watched shows, floating out chemical weapons, saying, well, is Biden ready to go in? This is exactly what happened leading up to Iraq. Exactly. Weapons of mass destruction, floating that Saddam has them. He's prepared to use them, blah, 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 blah. If you don't remember that, look it up. Watch the old clips. And I also want to play, I'm not like a religious Jew, but I am a Jew. I know my history. Rachel Maddow also had Michael McFaul on, who used to be the ambassador, the U.S. ambassador to Russia. Let's hear this genius comment he made.
Just on Ukrainian television, just 30 minutes ago, brave journalists, just like our team covering the war there in Kiev. And one of the commentators said something interesting about how horrific this war is. And remember, these are people who suffered under fascism, that fought the Nazis. As the Nazis came and then the Red Army came back through. One of the Russian journalists said, there's one difference between Hitler when he was coming in and Putin. Hitler didn't kill ethnic Germans. He didn't kill German-speaking people. That's I think people need to remember that when we're talking about cities like Kharkiv and Mariupol and Kiev, there are large populations there, up to a third and sometimes as much to a half that are Russian speakers and are ethnic Russians. And yet Putin doesn't seem to care about that. He slaughters the very people he said he has come to liberate.
Whoa. Tells you who gets ambassadorships in the United Corporations of America, because we do live in the United Corporations of America. Yeah, Hitler didn't kill, ethnic Germans other than the German Jews who spoke German, other than the German dissidents who tried to help the Jews, other than the homosexuals who were German. Oh, yeah, he didn't kill any ethnic Germans. I mean, the ignorance and insanity of that comment by the former U.S. ambassador to Russia. And not that Putin isn't deplorable, he is. But there is too casually in our society the evocation of Hitler and the Nazis, when Hitler was a unique evil. Hitler was a unique evil, and the Nazi regime were a unique evil. That doesn't mean what Putin is doing is not horrible. It doesn't mean that he's not killing innocent people. But we cannot whitewash history by, to gin up fear and gin up ratings and all this, just casually be like, well, you know, Putin's worse than Hitler on this one. And MSNBC tweeted it, what this guy said, and then deleted it, if that tells you anything. Just to give you a little insight into who this guy is, Michael McFaul. Colin, if we could show Lindy Mann's tweet, which showed a DM from Michael McFaul a couple years ago. This is what Michael McFaul had to say in this DM. I guess it was a private DM. I have a job for life at the best university in the world. I live in a giant house in paradise. I make close to $1 million a year. I have adoring fans on TV and 500,000 followers on Twitter, 99% who also admire me. I'm doing just fine without a damn visa from Russia. And I'm not afraid to tweet under my own name. I feel sorry for people like you who aren't brave enough to do so. I wonder if he tweeted that from his giant mansion in paradise. So that's the thinking of this MSNBC guest, who basically says, I've got a job for life at a prestigious university. I live in paradise. I could say what I want, do what I want without any penalty. He later apologized once that private DM came out. Colin, if we have that follow-up tweet from Lindy Mann, I just wanted to show what she said about that. Reminder that all academics live off the backs of tuition, which today is all student loans, which are allowed to be discharged in bankruptcy, effectively living off slave system of debt. Every tenured academic drinks the blood of the youth in order to write BS papers. I don't know if I'd go that far, but does have a point. Does have a point. So that's who said that on MSNBC. Now, do people say really stupid things on MSNBC, on CNN? Have I said stupid things? Absolutely. But that's not a stupid thing he said. That's a grossly, historically ignorant, offensive thing he said. So much so that I believe the Auschwitz Memorial or a Holocaust Museum had tweeted at MSNBC, basically pointing out that this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. It's ignorant as hell. So that's where we stand. Obviously, we're going to continue covering this. I'm not a foreign policy expert. I don't pretend to be one. There's a lot of propaganda going around on both sides, but we're going to continue covering it because it's a critically important story. So stay tuned for that. As a reminder, if you came to the show late, quick announcement. Next week, I will be down in Florida, back on the ground, because Status Coup is one of the only outlets that actually, independent outlets, that does on-the-ground reporting. We will be in Florida covering, Ron DeSantis is doing a lot of things, shall we say, a culture war to cover up the economic war he is waging on the people down there. Right now, Florida is pushing what they're calling a Don't Say Gay bill. And somebody said, Jordan, why cover bothering this culture war stuff? Because it affects human beings. It's a civil rights issue. It's a civil rights and humanitarian issue. And make no mistake, what they're saying about this bill, that, oh, this is just for kindergarten through third grade, preventing people, preventing talk about sexuality. No, that's not what this bill is doing. That's what they're saying this bill is doing, but it's not what the only thing this bill is doing. So we're going to cover the Don't Say Gay bill, the attack on LGBTQ plus people, and we're going to cover some other stories down there too, not just this. So please, if you're a Status Coup member, or if you're not a Status Coup member, support Status Coup on the ground reporting. StatusCoup.com/join. StatusCoup.com/join. It's not cheap for me to go down there. Colin will be joining me. Flights, hotels, rent a car, food, gas. Are you seeing the gas prices? Because we got to get a rent a car. Please sign up, statuscoup.com/join. We're probably going to try to cover some other stories outside of just the Don't Say Gay bill, but we'll be out there next week, probably for a week or so. So statuscoup.com/join, become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. It makes a big, big difference. So we already have some interviews lined up, including with LGBTQ students who will be affected by this. Moving on real quick, we're about to have on a guest from Michigan. There's a huge air pollution scandal going on there. Massive scandal. not getting mainstream media attention. So we're going to have a guest on this scandal. And trust me, this kind of shit ain't only going on in Michigan. It's a paper mill plant that has caused massive air pollution, odor into the community, making people sick. And the state of Michigan's environmental department shockingly covering it up. So we're going to get to that in a minute. But real quick, an update on President Manchin. Colin, if you have this, President Manchin is striking again. He is blocking one of Biden's Federal Reserve nominees. If you have the CNBC article, and keep sharing this live stream, keep pressing that like button. I will read the super chats at the end, so keep those coming. Manchin comes out against Biden Fed nominee Raskin, throwing her confirmation into doubt. Her previous public statements have failed to satisfactorily address my concerns about the critical importance of financing on an all-of-the-above energy policy. The White House fired back by saying that many of the most intense attacks Raskin has faced have come from those with close ties to the energy industry. Colin, if we can move down in the article a little bit, this is why he's blocking this Federal Reserve nominee. Hold on. Where is this? Sorry. Manchin's statement Monday suggested that he doesn't believe Raskin, who has previously called for stronger climate policies and critiqued the energy sector, could serve on the Fed without politicizing her decisions. Quote, the Federal Reserve Board is not an institution that should politicize its critical decisions. The time has come for the Federal Reserve Board to return to its defining principles and dual mandates of controlling inflation by ensuring stable prices and maximum employment. Yes, he's so concerned about politicizing the Fed. Many of Manchin's top donors include executives in the coal, oil, and gas industries. Within the past year, Manchin has received donations from Ryan Lance, CEO of ConocoPhillips, Vicky Holub, CEO of Occidental Petroleum, and Arlene Riggs, the president of Valero Energy. He's also received donations from massive Republican donors, nothing to see there, as well as some big Democratic Party donors, too, that don't want any climate proposals. Then, on top of him blocking Biden's Federal Reserve chair, who, for the crime of calling for climate policies, Colin, if you have this statement he made on he's not big on electric vehicles, apparently. So Joe Manchin, not so big on electric for some strange reason. Manchin says he's reluctant to support the proliferation of electric vehicles. This is the Catherine Gramble tweet, if you have that, Colin. I know I got a lot of tweets today. There we go. Quote, Manchin, I'm very reluctant to go down the path of electric vehicles, Manchin said. I'm old enough to remember standing in line in 1974 trying to buy gas. I remember those days. I don't want to have to be standing in line waiting for a battery for my vehicle because we're now dependent on a foreign supply chain, mostly China. Again, Manchin, and this is one of his big shticks, why he blocked Build Back Better, is because of electric vehicles, and moving towards electric. So he's worried that we're now dependent on the foreign supply chain, mostly China. So he doesn't want to be dependent on the foreign supply chain for electric vehicles. So he doesn't mind that we're probably going to be lining up at gas stations now pretty soon because his donors are the fossil fuckers. He doesn't mind that. But he does mind if we'd have to be lining up on a line for electric batteries because that's not his donors. You see how that makes sense? And oh, by the way, he's very worried about dependence on the foreign supply chain, but he has no problem with the TPP that was proposed. I don't think he was in the Senate when NAFTA was pushed, but he doesn't mind globalization, foreign trade, which has basically sold our manufacturing to China and other countries. Doesn't mind any of that. So we could be dependent on foreign countries for our manufacturing if my donors make money off of offshoring those jobs, but we cannot be dependent on foreign countries for the batteries that go into electric cars because I don't make money off of that. And to hell with the global economy, and to hell with the global planet, by the way. And oh, by the way, I don't mind if people are waiting online at gas stations while the fire is encircling them from the climate inferno that I don't give a damn about. And I don't want to go on a monologue because we're about to bring on a new guest on a really important topic. But shame on the squad and shame on Bernie for not going on aggressive offense against this corrupt Neanderthal, Joe Manchin, 8 months ago. They should have been holding rallies, calling out his donors in West Virginia. They should have been on his doorstep, calling him out. Bernie said, let's get rid of Trump and we'll fight Biden on day one. Yet he was very diplomatic initially against Manchin. The most aggressive thing he did against Manchin was write an op-ed in a West Virginia newspaper calling for Manchin, calling him out for not supporting Build Back Better. There was never any rallies against Manchin. We had activists encircling Manchin's little boat yacht, but not the squad, not Bernie, not listing his donors, not calling him corrupt, along with Sinema. And that, by the way, would have gotten media attention. The media wasn't going to cover Joe Manchin's donors or corruption on its own. You need the progressives in the House or the Senate to be calling that out. You need them to be digitally organizing against Joe Manchin. You need them to be in-person organizing within limits. I don't want Bernie gallivanting around the country during a pandemic, but you get my point. So, of course, Manchin is corrupt, but our elected leaders, our progressives, didn't do us any favors trying to negotiate with Joe Manchin. And devil's advocate, people will say, Jordan, if you would have done that, he would have been even more entrenched. You know what? I've been traveling the country for 6 or 7 years now. I've been all over this country. I've covered a lot of corrupt politicians, local politicians, state politicians, national politicians. You know what most politicians have in common? Most of them are incredibly thin-skinned. Most of them basically have some basic insecurities, and most of them do not like being shamed publicly. Joe Manchin's no different. And by the way, when Joe Manchin has been shamed publicly, it has had an effect. So this is what you get when you allow Joe Manchin to play president, when you allow Joe Manchin to block everything. Obviously, Biden didn't fight Joe Manchin either. So there's plenty. I didn't expect Biden to fight Joe Manchin because Biden probably agrees with Manchin on most of this. But I did expect the elected progressives to go on aggressive offense, which we never got. In fact, when I asked Ro Khanna, when he came on my show, why aren't you guys like holding rallies in West Virginia, calling this man out? You could get 10,000 people to a rally pretty quickly in West Virginia. West Virginia, yeah, it's voted red the last 10 years. It's got a long working class union labor tradition. He looked at me like I had three eyes. So I digress. Smash the like button. I'm really excited for this next guest. You will not hear this on mainstream media, but it is extremely, extremely important to cover this story. Joining me now is Brandi Crawford Johnson.
Hi,
Brandi,
thank you for having me, Jordan.
Absolutely. Very sorry that you just had to listen to me ranting and raving on war and Joe Manchin.
That's okay. I'm into it.
But Brandi, we spoke a few weeks ago, and I've been kind of swamped with other things, but I wanted to have you on. A lot of people focus on the water, and I have focused on the water all over this country. Obviously, we know Flint. We know other parts of Michigan have PFAS in the water, which are cancer-causing chemicals made from the process of manufacturing Teflon and other nonstick cookware. But air pollution, the mainstream media don't really seem to care about that. But it could equally make people sick. And there is a plant in Michigan and Kalamazoo that has been getting away with releasing toxic chemicals into the air that is making people sick. From what I could tell, the state of Michigan Environmental Department, which I have a history with because they helped cover up the Flint water crisis and the toxic water. From what I could tell, the state of Michigan Environmental Department, which has a new name, but pretty much the same MO, has helped cover this up. Let's start from the beginning. Explain to the audience, what is this plant? Who is this plant? What were they making? And what are the chemicals and toxins that have been released?
So the plant is a paper mill called Graphic Packaging International. They are in the top 50 toxic air and water polluters in the nation. And they have just completed an expansion in Kalamazoo, Michigan, which is going to increase greenhouse emissions by about 220%. They release every toxic chemical that you can think of, hydrogen sulfide, methyl mercaptan, carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide. there's like 30 different ones at least. And this is kind of like a cover up too. I mean, I call it the Kalamazoo air crisis, like the Flint water crisis. There is a fence line community located next door that I lived in for 8 years. And I developed asthma as a result of the toxic gas leaks that Graphic Packaging refused to put any pollution prevention in place. They were never regulated properly by Eagle or the EPA. And they've never had any enforcement. They've had like 10 penalty written violation notices over since 2010. And they've never got one penalty for it. And it's kind of like Eagle encourages the pollution to continue. They give permits to polluters next to fence line communities without doing any health impact studies, which is totally immoral. And they even give money towards these projects. Eagle's given $3 million.
I just want the audience to know Eagle is basically the state of Michigan's.
Yeah,
EPA.
it's the state
Every state has their own environmental department.
Right. They're the state version of the EPA, I guess you want to call it. And they changed their name after the Flint water crisis, thinking that was gonna make people like forget or something, but really they are doing the same things that they did in Flint. They cover things up. They allow the bad guys to get away with murder. I mean, we have a 14-year death gap in our neighborhood because of these toxic gas releases, and Graphic Packaging has refused to fix anything. I mean, there's been engineers that have come out from the city of Kalamazoo saying, put a cap on your wastewater clarifier, and Graphic Packaging says, no, I'm not going to.
Right.
I mean, they have $600 million for an expansion, but they don't have $500,000 to fix all the leaks that the engineers were told them to fix. And to me, it seems like they know that they're going to get away with whatever they want to get away with, because Eagle never enforces any of the regulations that they violate. And, they even started their expansion without an air permit, and Eagle just sent them another written violation notice, never gave them a penalty. And it's like, they knew that they were going to get away with it. That's why they just started expansion without an air permit, because they know Eagle let them do whatever they want. And it's just sad because the neighborhood is suffering extreme respiratory disease, cancer. The employees, I hired a toxicologist that said there was a severe health risk to the employees of the plant and the residents nearby. And it's just sad. And it's been a huge battle. There's corruption with the city of, politicians, the state politicians. The Graphic Packaging donates to one of our politicians, Fred Upton, to his campaign. And the rest of the politicians, they've ignored me. They've ignored other residents. We have a lot of local coverage that's consistently being reported on what's going on there. And we have a health study coming out in a couple of weeks from the state that I begged them to do for like 2 years. And they've delayed that too. And they're going by some of the air monitoring that was done by the city, but the city has a wastewater plant next door to Graphic Packaging. So we don't trust the city monitoring either, because they're liable. And they also didn't fix their equipment for a long time. They had a study done in 2009 where they showed like all these gas leaks, these toxic gas leaks were 5 times the minimal risk level, but they never told anyone in the city about it. So they just kept saying, oh, it's an odor problem. They had doctors with the hospital up the hill filing complaints, residents, because there's a hospital, you can smell the toxic gas in the hospital. And they just ignored it, and they just pretended like it was just an odor issue, instead of saying, hey, we know what the odor is. It's toxic gas and it's leaking out of the wastewater plant and the paper mill.
I just want to show the audience. So this is, Colin, if you have the F rating, this is from Ozone. If you live in Kalamazoo County, the air you breathe may put your health at risk, with an F rating from Ozone. Then you look at, this is from 2017, so God knows what it is now. The leading causes of death in Kalamazoo County. You have heart disease is the leader, a little under the Michigan average. Cancer is pretty close to the Michigan average. Look what's above the Michigan average and well above the U.S. average. Chronic lower respiratory diseases at 48%. So, yeah. It's no wonder that that's 7 points higher than the U.S. average. The other thing people should know, if you don't know this, you're not just dealing with like an environmental department that's like other environmental departments just doing the bidding of big business. You're dealing with an environmental department that, in my view, is criminal. If you go back to the Flint water cover-up, and that's what it was, literally the head of the drinking water office in Michigan, Leanne Schechter Smith. For those of you in Michigan, for those of you in Flint, you know what I'm talking about. The head of the drinking water office in October of 2014, when epidemiologists in Michigan were sounding the alarm, there's a massive Legionnaires outbreak here. Legionnaires is a waterborne disease. It kills people. It's waterborne bacteria. The epidemiologists were waving the flag. Hey, we need to notify the public here. We need to do something. And the head of the drinking water office called the Department of Health and stopped them from going public. Stop them from going public. Literally 16 months before the people of Flint were notified of the Legionnaires outbreak. They already knew about it 16 months earlier.
Oh, they know about everything ahead of time. And they don't, just like the Benton Harbor, there's another lead water crisis in Benton Harbor, and they knew about it for 3 years and never did anything. Just like, they knew about this for 12 years and never did anything, maybe even before that. I mean, these people that are the heads of the departments, like of air quality and water quality at Eagle, they've been there 30 years at least. So they're the ones that have to go. Maybe not all these employees that have come on. I doubt that some of them I've talked to, they all know who I am, every department there, because there's issues in every department that I don't just complain about air quality, I complain about the PCB contamination in our neighborhood and that graphic packaging is a responsible party for along the river. I complain about, water quality issues with PFAS. I was on the Eagles PFAS advisory board and I quit because they knew where all the PFAS were located in all of the landfills in Michigan. And I asked them to release it to the public and they refused. And so I said, well, if you're not going to do anything to try to solve the PFAS crisis and let the public know, there's families that live next to these landfills. They deserve to know if there's high levels of PFAS there. And it's just like, it's the same thing with the Kalamazoo Environmental Concerns Committee. When I joined that, I told them about that F rating. I told them, this is the American Lung Association report. There's reporters saying we have the dirtiest air quality in the nation. So what are you guys going to do about it? Well, what they did about it is they sent cease and desist letters to all the journalists saying, don't report our air quality, it will ruin our reputation. So that shows the city of Kalamazoo, they don't care about the people and their health. They care about their reputation. They care about their political goals. And it's just really sad. But the problem is that the world is not woke to all of this. And I'm trying to wake people up. And the best way to do that is through journalism. That's the only way. And I mean, you can say, I've had posts taken down on Facebook trying to say stuff too. And I'm just like, hold on, is Facebook in with this corporation? I mean, I know this corporation is a big Fortune 500 company, but I don't know how they can get away with this. all these corporations are donating to local politicians, to state politicians, federal politicians. A lot of these companies produce, in some cases, are one of the biggest employers in a lot of these areas. So they're allowed to get away with literally bloody murder due to, economic reasons. By the way, to those of you in the audience right now saying, Jordan, same thing's happening here. Why are you spotlighting this? Well, I can't cover every single story, but yeah, this kind of stuff is happening everywhere. And it's not just paper mills. You got uranium mining, other types of mines. Obviously, we know what's been going on in West Virginia with the coal mines and the corruption there. A lot of this is happening in poorer communities. A lot of this is happening on the backs of Black and brown people. And I know there was a civil rights complaint when it comes to this specific story. Yeah, so I filed two. I filed one with the city because this is a predominantly African-American community, fence line community, environmental racism all across the board here. I filed one against Eagle with EPA, ECRCO. And I filed one, and then soon after I filed one, I think Earth Justice filed one for Flint, and then there was one filed for Detroit. So there's, several complaints filed for the permits given to these polluters next to fence line communities that are predominantly African American have already faced, years of, frontline pollution. I mean, there's another thing that just is not being talked about is the COVID rate in the neighborhood is horrible too. There's people so young dying from COVID that, had asthma, like a young guy, like 20 years old, died yesterday. Another person on life support, 30, a 17-year-old died a few years ago. I mean, there's just a lot. I mean, if you look at that death rate for African American, like that's where the neighborhood is all the African Americans predominantly live in that area. And you look at those death rates on that county sheet that you just showed, and look at the difference between white and black, you see it's double. Like, I mean, there's like 1,500 children under the age of 1 that died. That's crazy. We only have like 8,000 people in the neighborhood. So if 1,500 people are dying every day, they're just under 1 year old. Like, come on. But the toxicologist says that we live in a valley, so the gases get trapped. So it's worse. And, so it's just like a toxic gas cloud. It's like everyone's just being gassed pretty much. A lot of people compare it to Hitler putting people in vans and gassing them to death, but I feel like, just for them to expand during a climate crisis to increase all of these emissions by so much. I mean, they already released 700,000 tons, and they also lied. They also lied to their green bond investors for this expansion because they're considered a recycling cardboard plant or whatever now. They got $100 million in green bonds, and they never told any of the investors that they were being investigated for, environmental racism, and that there was civil rights complaints, and that they had a class action lawsuit against them for gassing everyone for all these years. And so it's like, I don't see how they get away with this stuff.
Well, I'll also point out, not to trigger, people on COVID, because everyone's got their opinion. I'm pro-vaccine and all that. But Omicron, in particular, the Omicron variant, and now there's like a sub-Omicron variant spreading in Europe, and cases are way up in England, and hospitalizations are up. I know in America, there's the COVID is over crowd and shut the fuck up. Unfortunately, it's not over. But Omicron in particular, they were finding that it affected children significantly because it got into their upper airway, whereas other strands were more effective to the lower airway. So when you have such a high respiratory death rate, and you have kids with asthma and inhaling this gas. I mean, I remember when I was in St. Louis a couple of years ago, I was covering, there was basically nuclear waste stored, and it basically was leaking. And there were children wearing masks there, and I smelled the gas, and I was just reporting for a few days. They lived there. So it's making even children and adults more susceptible to COVID. And in this case, like you said, majority African Americans.
Well, Harvard and Stanford both did a study that said that severe COVID cases are increased by, the deaths from severe COVID are increased by 15% if you live in a polluted area.
Right.
Absolutely. So, I mean, there's a lot of studies out, I know, but I don't know what to do. I've literally been begging to save everyone's lives for like so long, just to see. They won't even come down there. The governor, she's visited the city so many times, and she's a Democratic governor, and she won't even come down to the neighborhood and go door to door like I did, because I was getting burning eyes at one of the houses, because I've owned several houses in this neighborhood, and I just started getting burning eyes. And then after I started getting burning eyes, it was a new symptom. My asthma started getting worse. And so I started doing FOIA requests, and that's where I found all these toxic gas studies that the city had done. And I went door to door, and like everyone was pulling out like eye drops for their burning eyes and inhalers. And I was like, oh my God, it's every street. Like, are you serious? And even our mailman, Ryan, who didn't even live in the neighborhood, he was like, yeah, I get burning eyes, especially when it rains. Acid rain.
And by the way, Michigan's slogan under Snyder, I don't know what it is now, was pure Michigan. Pure Michigan.
Pure toxic Michigan.
Pure Michigan. And what's amazing to me, can you imagine, Brandi, right now, if a story came out that like a Russian city had been releasing gas into its, I mean, they don't have much in terms of minorities, but was releasing gas into its people, and they covered it up and did nothing for the people, we'd be calling it a war crime.
Right.
But here in America,
it's okay. That's what I don't understand. And it's like, I've even talked to EPA officials, like, you need to sue the EPA. I'm like, what? You guys work here, you know? And they're just like, yeah, they've just been covering the stuff. They work together. They call each other partners, you know? They're partners to protect the environment and the people. No, they're not. I mean, how are you protecting us if the air monitors in Michigan that monitor our air quality have the criteria pollutants turned off? You don't know how much lead is coming in the air. You don't know how much carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide and every criteria pollutant that is required by law to be regulated and tested in the air. Eagle has the monitors turned off for at least 5 out of 6 of them. And our air monitor is located in the middle of the fairgrounds.
Could you back up? You just said that the air quality monitors are turned off?
Yes, the EPA ones that the state oversees. And I'm sure it's happening. I read from a Reuters article that it was happening like in Pennsylvania and Ohio too. Like there was a chemical explosion and it said it was the cleanest air day ever or something for the whole week, even though it was like a huge chemical explosion. So everyone just goes about their day, you know, doing their normal life and everything, thinking, okay, well, you know, this is being regulated. Everything's fine. I can trust the government to regulate my air and my water. No, you can't. And that's what I learned the hard way. And I don't want anybody else to. I want people to speak out and start investigating what's really going on where they live so that they can protect their children and their grandchildren, because this is crazy. Like, this is crazy that it's been hidden from us for so many years. And, you know, my parents and my grandparents, they just look at, you know, factories provide jobs, but they probably just didn't realize that they also provide pollution.
Right.
You know, that if they're not regulated, I mean, every factory is going to have pollution, but if you're not going to have regulations, then it's going to be way worse, and it's going to cause all of these horrible diseases. And to me, it's just a scam. I feel like these, you know, polluters should have had, here's a good example, you know, medical marijuana facilities, they have to have like filters on their stacks so the marijuana odor doesn't get out. How come the factories don't have to? Like, I don't understand. You know what I'm saying? Like, well, this is crazy. The marijuana industry in Michigan is regulated so tight, but the pollution is not.
I'll tell you a quick story, and the audience too. This tells you everything you need to know. I've been to Flint, I don't know, I think 18 times. And one of the stories I did there was the state of Governor Snyder's right-hand man. If you look at it in like mafia terms, his like consigliere was offering payoffs to sick Flint residents. He was going around Flint basically trying to make deals with sick Flint residents to keep them quiet. And one of those residents was a couple, Adam and Christina Murphy. They're since divorced. So as part of like wooing them, they invited Adam and Christina to the state water lab where they do the testing. So Adam and Christina go to the water lab. For some reason, there's like an ex-U.S. Marine, next to them, which they found intimidating, with the state of Michigan environmental officials giving them a walking tour of the lab. So Adam and Christina, they look over and they see this machine, and they ask them, "Oh, what's this machine? It looks like a next level, like futuristic thing." And it was basically a machine that could test for every single chemical on the periodic element, on the periodic table. Heavy metals, could test for everything. And Adam and Christina said, "Oh, I've never seen like reports with all these things that this machine tests for." "Oh yeah, we don't use that machine because the EPA, the federal drinking water regulations don't require us to test for these other things." That's not just Michigan. They have the capability to test for all sorts of things beyond lead and copper, not only in the water, but in the soil, in the air. And they don't do it. I wonder why, because you can't find what you're not looking for.
Exactly.
And if you actually were looking for all these things, you're talking all over this country. I mean, possibly hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars in remediation in terms of these plants, water pipe distribution, which, contrary to what Biden says, this infrastructure deal does not change all the lead pipes around the country. It puts a slight dent in it. But literally, at least the state of Michigan had the capability to test for everything in the water, and they just don't do it because they're not required to. And that's the other thing. A lot of people thought like, oh, the EPA just suddenly became corrupt under Trump. No, the EPA has basically been there to serve business interests and test for the bare minimum and basically put out fires and put Band-Aids on gaping environmental gunshot wounds, which you've been experiencing for years.
Yeah. And I don't understand why they don't bring help to the frontline communities like this. You know, like they have FEMA if there's like a hurricane, a tornado, you know, to come and help these people get relocated and stuff like that. But they don't want to relocate anyone. But maybe it is because it costs too much money. But do people have to, do they deserve to suffer like that? I mean, you could have all these other plants they've shut down. You know, they could have moved somewhere else to like an industrial park or something, because literally there's like nothing besides a chain link fence that separates this neighborhood from these two plants.
Right.
So they don't deserve to die premature death for your profits. Like it does not make sense. And I won't stop fighting for justice for everyone, because I'm the one that sees these people dying. I'm the one that sees all these children that have to miss school all the time because of asthma, or they are terrified. There was even an elementary school that started their own air quality group because they were wondering if the gas that they smell at school every day is going to make them die. And it's like, should 7-year-olds be worried about dying from gas in their school every day? No. I mean, this is something that should be talked about a lot. Like it's completely ignored, and it's horrible. And I know Biden's gung-ho on environmental justice, but I still don't see any actions. I see like all of these, you know, promises that environmental justice is at the forefront, and the EPA is going to do more, and they're going to really focus on fence line communities and bring in everything and bring in help for everyone. Really? Wasn't that last year that you said that?
Yeah, Biden's gung-ho a lot. Biden's verbally gung-ho on a lot of things. He's also gung-ho on now rising the Pentagon budget to nearly $800 billion. And guess what? The Pentagon is the biggest emitter of greenhouse gases in the world. So environmental justice, he says a lot of things. And let's just point it out. This is a bipartisan thing. Whitmer is the governor. I mean, granted, she's been dealing with COVID and a lot of other things, but she's the governor. I could tell you from talking to people in Flint, she hasn't followed through on her promises to them, hasn't done a goddamn thing for Flint. She actually told Flint during the governor's campaign that she was going to reopen the shut down water stations that former Governor Snyder shut down. She never did that. The former mayor of Flint told me on the record, I went to Governor Whitmer saying, we desperately need more state funds for interior plumbing, residents' interior home.
Yes.
Plumbing. The governor said to her, the legislature has Flint fatigue. There's nothing I could do. So she hasn't lifted a finger to fight for Flint, and it doesn't sound like
she's not going to fight for us, because it's, you know, even the Michigan, she's all about the Economic Development Council, the Michigan Economic Development Council, and they gave graphic packaging like $89 million for the expansion.
$89 million.
Yes, of taxpayer and school funds. And so that's another reason why I feel like she hasn't toured the neighborhood. Like the University of Michigan showed like this map in 2019, all the environmental justice hotspots in Michigan. It was like Flint, Saginaw, Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids, all the main cities, you know, and she hasn't done anything. She's ignored all my calls, all my emails. You know, I had one politician assistant reach out to me, Gary Peters' assistant, his name's Peter, but he hasn't done anything. And I just feel like, you know, election year is coming up too. I mean, the election year is now. I mean, it's a few months, not very many months away. And if she's not going to do anything to protect, she's got this Michigan Healthy Climate Plan that I had to speak out on, you know, saying about the air monitoring, the environmental justice, you know, issues. And one of my friends was like the climate advisor for Eagle. And she didn't get any staff the whole 2 years. Governor Whitmer appointed her to the climate and energy of Eagle department. She begged for staff for 2 years and she didn't get it. So she had to quit. And so now they have a new advisor they put in December. And I said, how are you going to even implement any of this climate plan that you have if you don't have any staff? I said, I've looked on that. There's not even any job openings to hire anyone. And she hired this environmental justice advocate too. And both of these advocates that are in her department at Eagle, they practically bribed me not to file a civil rights complaint. They just kept asking me, what do you want? What do you want? We don't want you to file a civil rights complaint at a Zoom meeting. And I was like, shut down graphic packaging. They have to fix their stuff. You know, they need to fix all this malfunctioning equipment. They're like, we're not going to do that. And then like probably a month after that, they gave them the permit.
So I want to make something clear so the audience gets it, because this is a different level of corruption that I didn't know. So the Michigan Economic Council,
Economic Development Council, yep. MEDC.
The MEDC, which is basically just a council of donors. I mean, I've covered it before. It's just wealthy donors, real estate people, chamber of commerce types, but it's an official apparatus of the Michigan government. So the Michigan Economic Development Council gave graphic packaging, you're saying $80 million?
Yeah, it's called, in part of the MEDC, there's something, they don't ever say what it's called. It always says MSF. You have to look at the reports. I look at the reports. I look at everything, all the data, all the details. And it's Michigan Strategic Fund, which is part of MEDC. It's the same thing, really. And so Michigan Strategic Fund, which is part of MEDC, gave them that. Yeah, it says right on their brownfield report. Because graphic packaging also expanded on brownfields that they contaminated over the years.
So basically, Michigan's giving them the money to further pollute Michigan citizens.
But they'll never admit it. I mean, they'll never, I mean, I think that's why they're ignoring it. But it's like I told them, I'm going to continue to fight for this. I'm going to continue to fight for everyone. And I'm going to uncover every single step of this corruption. Like, she appointed our ex-mayor, Bobby Hopewell, to the MEDC right after he gave graphic packaging permission, and as mayor of Kalamazoo, to expand the plant. So that's another thing, you know, and then literally within days after he was appointed to MEDC, Marianne Dolehanty, the official who was in charge of air quality over Eagle, gave graphic packaging the permit. And then they had another part of the permit that was given later that year. But to me, it seems like, you know, all the politicians in the city of Kalamazoo, they ignore everyone. David Anderson is our mayor, but he was our vice mayor with Bobby Hopewell before he stepped down to go on to MEDC. And every time people would call in and say, our eyes are burning, our lungs are burning, please help, they wouldn't even say anything. We even had an epidemiologist that wrote a book called The Death Gap from Chicago call in and say, you need to rezone this area because these people have a 14-year death gap. They're dying 14 years premature than they should be. And they didn't even address his comment. I mean, they completely ignore it. Even one of the politicians in Kalamazoo that stepped down, Erin Knott, she said that she could smell the gas at her house. And when she spoke up to the mayor and the rest of the commissioners, they told her to keep quiet about it. And she was like a commissioner. Like,
you know, some people might say, Jordan, you're overstepping, but there's a lot of talk now. I talked about it earlier. You know, the media is pushing chemical weapons. Putin's going to use chemical weapons, gassing their people, blah, 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 blah. What do you call this? What do you call what's being done in Kalamazoo, what's been done in Kalamazoo, that the Michigan government with its little business apparatus is giving this known toxic polluter nearly $100 million to expand and pollute more people? It's not just black people that they're going to pollute. It's going to be poor white people, working class people. What do you call that? A tea party?
Genocide.
Yeah. Because
that's what I call it. Genocide. That's what they don't like it, but ecocide and genocide, it's both. They're very similar. You know, I mean, we have the worst, like one of the worst Superfund sites that graphic packaging is still spilling into the river. Like right now, as you and I are talking, in the wastewater plant. Like one of the reporters like took pictures of the PFAS foam on top of the river like a couple of weeks ago. The PCB mud that somebody almost died in because he got stuck in it trying to fish. I mean, it's just like, it's so toxic. It's like literally that. I mean, when Erin Brockovich interviewed me, she put like my title is your neighborhood a wasteland, a toxic wasteland? Because that's what to me, it seems like that's what it is. You know, it's all toxic, but there's still, I mean, they should stop it. You can't stop what happened in the past, but you can stop what you're going to do in the future. So why are you allowing this to continue?
Well, what's very interesting to me is the Michigan legislature is Republican. Obviously, Republicans with their little culture war on masks on children. We can't have that. It's tyranny. Democrats now have joined in. We want to take masks off children. You know, in a perfect world, I would love children not to have wear masks during.
They should be wearing masks to protect them from the toxic air.
But that's my point. Conservatives are very worried about masks on children during COVID. They don't give a damn, it seems, about the children here inhaling this toxic gas.
Right. Or anywhere. I mean, these it's not just Kalamazoo. These air monitors that have the criteria pollutants turned off, the EPA monitors, they're in rural, white, lower income communities. I mean, they don't even have enough air monitors as it is, but the ones they do have, they should at least have them turned on so you can see what the air quality is in that county.
Right.
And I'm from Cass County, Michigan. I grew up in Dowagiac, in a small town, and the air monitors turned off there too. I complained about that. I complained about all of them that I've seen turned off. They have a few criteria pollutants turned off in Detroit and Grand Rapids, but they still don't have them all turned on. And why are they turned off in these other cities? You know what I'm saying? Like, why?
Let me ask you, because you're a bit of a force of nature. I mean, you've done all these things. You're kind of like the Aaron Brockovich of Kalamazoo here, and you've moved out of Kalamazoo because of all this. But are the masses there aware of this? Because you said the media is covering it. In my experience with Michigan media, corrupt, in on the cover-ups, literally. I mean, in the case of Flint, I've broken cover up after cover up after cover up, and I've literally been told by some of the reporters there we're not allowed to report on this.
Yeah, me too. I've been told it, or I have a conflict of interest by some of the journalists told me that. I'm like, what?
You have a conflict of interest because you're a citizen inhaling the gas?
A conflict of interest for the journalists to write about the story of what's going on is what they've told me. I've talked to so many different ones. So Time Magazine did something on, like, you know, how everybody's obsession with shopping, you know, and they wrote a little bit about our story in there, but they wrote about other people, that hydrogen sulfide emissions. Like Aaron wrote about it, but mostly I have MLive in Kalamazoo. There's a reporter, Brad Devereaux, shout out to Brad. He's been covering this a lot on the local level. And Channel 3 News, they've been covering it. And Detroit covered my civil rights complaint, Detroit Free Press. I don't know if you know about them, but they covered the thing on the sacrifice zones in Michigan a couple of months ago, and Kalamazoo was included in that with Detroit and Flint. So it seems like
they're not following the money, and that's the problem.
Yeah,
they're
not.
They could cover it. MLive, the Flint Journal, they've done plenty of stories that basically regurgitate whatever the hell the state told them. Detroit Free Press done some stories more critical of the state of Michigan, particularly the state environmental department. But I don't see them following the money. I don't see them pointing out that the state of Michigan's, the fund you were talking about, that's part of the government, is literally giving graphic packaging $80 million. I mean, that's where the rubber meets the road. And these journalists in Michigan, it's not just Michigan, it's many other places, are basically muzzled not to report on this. And laughably saying to, like, one of the top activists, probably spending most of your time on this, that you have a conflict of interest because what?
They said they have a conflict of interest. Like, they can't report on something because of a conflict that their publication had or something with, maybe, I don't know. That's why I said it seems strange that they would even say that to me. You know, so many that I've talked to, because is the conflict with company? Like, you don't want to upset the company, or do you want to not upset the politicians, or do the politicians pay for your publication? Like, do they sponsor your publication? Like, they never really elaborated on it. So I don't I guess I really don't understand with that.
Next time, record the conversation, because that's scary.
Yeah, well, I started now.
Oh,
that was in the beginning when I started doing all this. And I was just like, so I couldn't believe how many people I would talk to. And I was learning as I went on about, you know, getting all these experts to help me, epidemiologists, toxicologists, you know, talking to everyone at the EPA. And, you know, right now, Eagle has went into informal resolution with me on the civil rights complaint to resolve it. And I just had this whole list of everything I want Eagle to change. And I don't know if they're going to listen to everything or not, but I don't think that the complaint can be resolved unless they make some serious changes at that agency. And I was even asked if, you know, I want to put my complaint with the other complaints, because there's just so many filed against that agency right now. And I said that I would not be opposed to that, but I want changes to be made. I mean, ECRCO is supposed to be there to take funding away from Eagle. Like they're supposed to take them away if they're violating civil rights like this, but they've never done that I've ever seen. And, you know, they say, oh, well, if we do that, you know, we don't want to take funding away from the agency because then things would be worse than they are. But I don't think there could be anything any worse than it already is. And if you don't put down penalties against polluters or penalties against agencies that aren't following the rules, then it's never going to stop. And you have to make people be held accountable for their actions. And that's what I'm about.
The deeper problem, I'm not trying to minimize trying to get reform in the environmental agency, and that goes across the board. But the deeper problem is when the system is corrupt, when the environmental agency is actually their top priority is really economic development rather than public health. And that is the state of Michigan, the federal EPA. They don't say so, but if you talk to EPA officials, which I have, you talk to state environmental whistleblowers, which I have, it's all about how do we help urban renewal, these buzzwords, economic development, economic renewal. So when you could clean house at the agency, but if the state of Michigan is still funding these criminal polluters, if these criminal polluters are then paying back to politicians and political donations, that's the problem. So not to minimize your efforts.
That's why you got to call out the politicians. You got to call out everyone that's involved in this, you know, and people have to stop voting for politicians that care more about profit over people. It should be people over profit. I mean, I don't feel like anybody understands how much like the 1% controls the world and how they just don't want, you know, the 95% of the rest, you know, 5% of us know really what's going on. And then the other 90% just they don't understand it, or they don't care, or they're just not educated on these issues. And so it's important to educate the public on what's really going on so that they can fight against this too. Because if you're not aware of what's going on, then you're not going to care, you know, you're not even going to think about it. And so I was one of those people that didn't know, that just wasn't aware, was just living my daily life, not even caring about this stuff, thinking, oh, the EPA protects the environmental stuff. Like we don't get taught about this stuff in school, you know,
or by the media.
Or about the media. Because a lot of people think the media will just, they want clicks too, you know. It's like, and obviously I feel like the media should definitely, they need to start being more transparent. They're just not transparent at all. And I mean, there is no transparency in government, no matter how much you put that on your website or you preach about we're all about being transparent. No, you're not. You're never going to be. You're never going to tell the public what's really going on. It seems like a big, like, it's just a scam to me. It's criminal. It's cruel.
Let me ask you, has this affected your health, family members' health?
Oh my God. Yeah, I have high blood pressure now. I never had that before I started this battle. And I've had PTSD since I was in the military. I worked for Homeland Security after the September 11th attacks. And I have never had as much stress in my life as I have doing this, because you're, like you said, I'm fighting a system here. And there's not enough people that are standing up. I want them to. There are a lot of people that are aware of this too, that just keep their mouths shut about it. I don't know why, because like, to me, it's just so infuriating. Like, I don't want anyone to get sick. I don't want anyone to die. I mean, everyone, just like everyone's so concerned about the Ukraine war, they should be. This is a humanitarian crisis, but so is the environmental issues that are happening in the United States right now. These are also humanitarian crises. These people are being like killed for profits. Like there's nothing. I mean, there's so many things they can do. Like put some damn filters on the smokestacks. Seems so easy. This could have been done long ago. We had these regulations in place since the 70s. They could have done this. I mean,
how about healthcare for the residents of Kalamazoo?
There's no, like, bring in some medical vans. That's what I asked Michigan Department of Health and Human Services do, because I got ATSDR. They're supposed to like put something in this health study about how stress affects environmental contaminated communities, because they interviewed me about it, ATSDR. And I begged CDC to like push MBHHS to do this report faster, you know, and they're supposed to like have like health recommendations in this report. I don't think there's been many studies out there like this, with fence line communities next to polluters and health recommendations and recommendations for the polluters. But I asked them to bring in medical vans. We do have a clinic inside of our neighborhood that I'd love to get FOIA requests on those records, because I feel like that's another thing that was put there because they knew about this. I mean, I even was told in the 70s there was high cancer rates over there, and that the plant, when it was under a different name, offered to pay them off, you know, because there's a cancer cluster over there, which makes sense.
Honestly,
Yeah.
it's hard for me to move on to other stories, other cities and states, because every time I try to move on to other cities and states, Michigan just reels you back, because it's just
crazy.
You're talking about bribery, payoffs. I mean, it's you can't make a movie this corrupt. And
yeah, it's scary. It's like to me, I always say that it's like I feel like I'm living in like a horror movie. Like I mean, the more I find out, the more scary it is to me, because I just don't understand why all the cover, and why would people that are trying to cover this up not care about their own families being poisoned?
Right.
That's strange to me.
Right.
Because I mean, if I worked there, I would be like, oh my God, you need to change this. Like, this is crazy. I'd be calling it out because I wouldn't want my family to be poisoned. I mean, my family got poisoned, and now there's other families still being poisoned. And so I'm like, hello, does anybody know what's going on here? Is anybody going to do anything? Or is everyone just going to keep covering this up and acting like it's not a problem when it's obviously a very, very severe public health crisis?
Let me ask you, what would be your message to people watching who maybe would want to act, but don't even know the first place to start in their community to find out about the air quality, the water? What would be your message to them in terms of how they could find out what factory pollution has been done there, and where do they even start? Because obviously at some point you started like them, not knowing where to start.
Well, I would look on the EPA website, toxic release inventory. It shows like polluters in your area. I'd look up the EPA environmental justice tool. That's very important. You know, that showed our risk. It said 91% chance of getting cancer, 91% chance of getting a respiratory disease. Yes, I've gotten the EPA about this tool too, because they knew about this stuff and they still never told in these communities that they were sacrifice zones, you know, that they were being polluted so bad. So I would Google the environmental justice EPA tool, and you can put in your address in it, and it'll tell you like all the polluters that are nearby, if they have high priority violations, if they have had any enforcement, and what your risk is. And I feel like, you know, you should, if there is a pollution, you know, any major pollution issues, or you live in a fence line community, you should speak out about it. Like, speak out about it in your state. Speak out about it with your local government. I don't think everybody's local government is corrupt as mine, and there might be like politicians that actually care. So, you know, if you're concerned about any of this, make sure you tell your mayor about it. Tell your commissioners, your city council. You can email your wherever you are in whatever EPA region, constantly call them and email them. That's what I did until they just had to talk to me. And they literally always email me and call me back now. But it's like, do that with your state agency, do that with the EPA. Like, do not give up. Everybody has time to send out an email every day or a phone call every day. You know, go show up to your city council meeting, show up to your, when you vote, make sure you really, really investigate the politicians that you're voting for. And if you really feel passionate about, you know, public health and helping people, then you should probably go like, you know, be a politician yourself. I feel like we need more people that are younger to become politicians, even if you want to start at the local level so you get to the state level. But anybody can do this. We need to get people that are corrupt out and people that actually care in, and then more progress can be made for humanity, because right now we're in a humanitarian crisis all in so many aspects of our lives. And if we don't really investigate what's going on at the local level, you know, no one's ever going to know. So do FOIA requests. You can always do FOIA requests too if you want to know something. I did FOIA requests with the city, and that's how I got these reports. And that's what started me.
Freedom of information requests.
Yeah, freedom of information requests. Like, it doesn't hurt to do those. And actually, you know what? I get way more information on Google than I do through FOIA because I get denied them a lot. So I'll just, put certain things like in there, and a report will show up, like an EPA document that I would never have gotten through FOIA. I found a lot of those just putting someone's name that you suspect might be like a shady person, like that's probably very corrupt, and see what comes up.
And let me ask you, as we kind of wrap up, you seem to be on the progressive wavelength, I would say, politically. You see there's a lot of cynicism in the progressive movement, a lot of dejected people, a lot of people throwing their hands up and saying, to hell with electoral politics, to hell with it all. It's too corrupt. There's nothing we could do. But then you are kind of this, force of nature, and you're not giving up. So what kind of gives you this drive? I mean, you could have just...
Because it's not true. I feel like that's the problem, is that, I mean, even some of my family members, people feel like that. They feel like that it's too far gone, that there's nothing they can do, but it's wrong. Look, I've done so much just by myself. I belong to a lot of environmental groups. I haven't done anything to help me. I've done it all on my own. And it just proves that, like, one person, every person out there can do something. You can do everything. There's way more of us than there is of them. There's way more of us than there is the 1% of the billionaires that practically run the world. There's more of us than the governmental officials that have worked in these agencies for 30 years that never cared about our health. There's way more of us. So what we need to do is more of us need to come together and do this. And you guys can find me on Facebook, Brandi Crawford Johnson. I'm willing to help anyone. Message me. Like, I want to help, the rest of us that thought that there's no chance, that we don't have a voice, but we do. We all have a voice, and we all have to be heard, and we have to just work together to make things better for the future of the next generation. Because what happened to us, we're all poisoned. But what we can do is try to prevent it from being worse in the future. And that's all we can do, is just work together and have hope. And that's all. I mean, I just have hope. I mean, I know a lot of people probably aren't Christian maybe, but it does say in the Bible, I don't go to church, but I feel like I'm spiritual. And it says, my people will be destroyed for lack of knowledge. Our people will be destroyed for lack of knowledge. And I feel like that's what's happening here. Our people are being destroyed because we're not knowledgeable of all of the corruption, all of the environmental poisoning. This is why. You wonder why, there's these cancer centers out here. You wonder why everyone has asthma. You're worried about all these diseases. You're taking prescriptions for a disease that you never should have even gotten. Right.
I just put Brandi's Facebook link in the super chat too, so people could message her. And I'll just say before we end, one thing you can do, and not everyone can. A lot of people work at multiple jobs and barely have time to pee. But if you have the time, go to your city council meetings. Because I can tell you, in the case of Flint, this was happening out in the open, the Flint water crisis and cover up. And then when residents started storming the gates, and it went from 5 people at a city council meeting to a couple hundred, the media was forced to cover it. And when the local media was forced to cover it, then the national media eventually was forced to cover it. So people can show up and pressure your city council. By the way, the city council, most of them are corrupt, sad to say. Most of them are bought off or just complacent or have been there for 20, 30 years. But they enjoy empty meetings. They enjoy not being pressured. So if 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 start showing up on this particular issue or any issue, put the heat on them.
Watch what they spend their money on too.
Right.
They got millions in contracts given out to polluters and just stuff that they shouldn't even be spending money on, but they spend no money to help people.
Right.
And it's because no one calls them on their stuff.
Right.
Call them out. You voted for them. This is your taxpayer money, people. Come on. Do you want your taxpayer money put out there so that your families can be poisoned? Do you want to work your jobs every single day, slaving every single day so that you can put monies in pockets of politicians and polluters that are poisoning your families. No, it's got to stop. They can make companies, they bring businesses every single year into communities, and they can bring businesses that aren't going to harm your families. They don't need businesses that will harm your families. There's other people that provide paper too, or whatever, that actually follow the rules, that don't have leaking gas and don't want to fix it just to be jerks, or because they don't want to spend the money. That's the problem, is that you can't keep the bad guys in. You have to get those guys out and bring in some good guys. There's tons of people out there that want to start good businesses that aren't going to poison people. There's tons of business owners. They should be helping all these small business owners that they should have given this millions of dollars for this polluter. They should have given it to all these small businesses to recover from the money they lost. That actually have legitimate businesses that aren't going to harm people. They actually provide a service that will help people. And they've got to stop. Just the corruption's got to stop. And I'm telling you, it's got to stop. And people have got to fight against it. It's just not fair.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time and everything you're doing, because, CNN has their little heroes award show, but actual heroes like you don't usually get spotlighted. And I'm pretty sure you won't get on CNN. And people should know that a judge has allowed a federal lawsuit to continue to move forward against this Kalamazoo factory that was in
Graphic
February.
packaging, yeah.
So this is moving forward, and we'll just have to stay in touch. And eventually, I'll be back to Michigan, so I'll have to add Kalamazoo onto my itinerary there.
Thank you, and thank you so much for bringing me on and helping, me talk to the people so that they understand. Because really, it's about bringing awareness. I can fight till tooth and nail against everyone, but it's also, to me, it's about bringing awareness so that people are aware of what's really going on in this world, and in Michigan, Kalamazoo, everywhere.
Absolutely. And I'll put your Facebook link in the description if people want to message you. Thanks, Brandi.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Love to everyone. Love to the audience. Love to you. Stay healthy and safe.
You too. Take care. So that was Brandi Crawford Johnson. We might just have to post that whole thing by itself, because it was something. And it just, I'm not surprised, but I am surprised. Does that make sense? I'm not surprised, but each new case, you do get a little surprised, particularly that the state of Michigan is basically paying for this corporate gassing its own people company to expand. That's a whole nother level. So I'll have to look further into that. By the way, as a reminder, still got over 200 people here. If you missed it earlier, next week, I'm headed down to Florida. I'm going to be on the ground in Florida, covering a bunch of things. But one of the top things I'm going to be covering, Ron DeSantis, who seems to be angling to run for president in 2024, the Republicans and Mr. DeSantis are pushing something they're calling the Don't Say Gay bill. They are pushing a Don't Say Gay bill, which they say is strictly to keep the sexual identity and talk of sex out of the classroom for grades kindergarten through 3. If you actually look at the bill, yeah, it's doing a lot more than that. And I am going to be there to cover that horrible bill. To those that say, Jordan, why are you covering this culture war bullshit? It's not bullshit. It is a culture war DeSantis is trying to wage, but this is a civil rights issue. This is a human rights issue. This is an issue for LGBTQ plus people. And this is DeSantis indeed pushing culture war to distract from the other toxic things he's doing in Florida, which we're going to be covering some other stories down there too. Of course, the Democrats are not so great either. So this is not like, hey, team Dem. But what DeSantis is doing down there, and by the way, this Don't Say Gay bill, if it passes there, it'll be like lightning fire. And there's other Republican states that are already copying it. So we will be covering that. We're also going to try to cover other stories down in Florida. Please, if you're not already a Status Coup member, by the way, shout outs, because we got a couple new member signups while we've been live. Welcome new Status Coup member Lenny. Welcome new Status Coup member Kiao. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. Kiao. That's 2 new members since we've been live. We need to sign up more members. On the ground reporting is not cheap. Flights, hotels, rent a car, gas. You paying attention to gas prices right now? Food on the road. Colin actually has to go to Best Buy to get some other equipment pieces that we need. Fund on the ground reporting. There's a whole lot of people sitting in a studio talking about similar things. Very few of them actually go out and report and give the microphone to the people. I need to be out on the ground because, frankly, when if I'm not on the ground for too long, you could ask my wife, I get a little restless. It invigorates me to be back out there, to talk to the people, give the microphone to them. And we don't take corporate funding. We have no funding from big banks, fossil fuckers, big pharma, big real estate, Silicon Valley, the military industrial complex. We don't take their money. We don't want their money. Our funding comes from you, the people. So sign up if you can. You become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. As a member, you get great perks, including a monthly members call through Zoom, which we're going to do when I'm back. So towards the end of the month, this month. You also get access to our members only Discord channel and behind the scenes videos. I just did a video for members over the weekend. That video, I read a nice letter I got from a viewer. I also told you what I do for my water here to try and filter out contaminants. So that video is up for members. Colin, I forgot. They go to StatusCoupMember.com for the newer members and click on member content.
Correct. Yeah, you go to StatusCoupMember.com and you highlight over the little member content thing, and there'll be 3 little panels. And yeah, you click the member content and you'll see each post, including the recent one. That's where you'll also see recordings from the member video Jordan mentioned. We post the full recording after in that same section as well. Yeah.
And as the weeks go on, we're going to try to step up our game for members. I'm trying to do as much as I can on top of the job, but we really want our members to feel like they're getting stuff for their membership. So sign up. You could sign $5 a month equals 16 cents a day. Obviously, if you don't have the funds, that's fine. We don't want to make anyone's situation tougher. But if you got $5 a month, we love our members at $10 a month. We have members at $20 a month. We also have members that sign up at $179 annually. This is how we grow. We need to keep growing. We need to expand. It's also made it difficult to grow our membership when we've had to kind of stop and start in terms of travel because of COVID. So these periods where I can get out there, where COVID's a little less, we need to really expand our paid membership because that's the only way we're going to be able to expand. And right now we want to expand our membership so that we could have stronger numbers because we are trying to get bigger funding out there too, not from corporations or any bad actors, but from like-minded people who might want to help with funding of Status Coup. So if you can, StatusCoup.com/join. You're actually funding real on the ground reporting, not just hot takes from a studio. So thank you. We'll be back at it tomorrow. We'll be joined by Steve Grumbine tomorrow. Appreciate you guys watching. And
don't forget about Super Chat.
Oh, almost forgot. Thank you. Let's read some Super Chats. D-Bow, the Black Panther, $10. Keep up the relentless, excellent journalism, Jordan. We see you. We salute you. Thank you. That's very kind of you. Tony, $5. Absolutely. The Progressive Caucus, Bernie and the squad are in desperate need of a spinal transplant. R.I.P. him, rip him a new one. I did. That's spinal transplant. It's a good one. Thank you, Tony. Double K, $49.99. Holy cow. Thank you so much for the generous donation there. I really appreciate it. J Sharp, $10. Very much appreciated. Peace Walker, $10. Capitalism will be the death of humanity. Mark my words. Robert Copeland, $10. Jordan, this is for your trip to Florida. Why, thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, Robert. Das Bosch Flights, €4.99. Corruption has reached a level where I begin to wonder if we would be better off with Skynet, the AI from the movie Terminator, in charge. That's not a bad idea. Kami John, $5. Thanks for the continued diligence and hard work, Jordan. Because of outlets like Status Coup and Real Progressives, the revolution will be televised. Thank you very much, Kami John. Appreciate it. And we do love our friends at Real Progressives. Go subscribe there. Aim Williamson just signed up as a YouTube member. Yes. So you could sign up as a Status Coup member. You could also sign up through YouTube. We love you all the same. We love people to sign up through our website. So that's statuscoup.com/join. statuscoup.com/join. We would love to see more membership signups to help fund the on-the-ground reporting, not just in Florida, but we'd like to go elsewhere. But money don't grow on trees. We don't print money like the U.S. government. So definitely sign up if you can. Statuscoup.com/join. You could also, Colin, if we have the United Corporations of America shirt, as the weather gets nicer, you could rock Status Swag. You got the United Corporations of America shirt, which you could pick up at statuscoup.com/store, statuscoup.com/store for your United Corporations of America shirt. We also have the Fossil Fuckers shirt, which is a personal favorite of mine. Ooh, I might have to wear those since I'm going in Florida and it's going to be good weather for these shirts. We also have other shirts there at the membership store. This is the quote shirt. Most people are not lacking compassion in this country. Most people have no fucking idea what the hell is going on. That's from yours truly. So keep it coming. We've started to see more people purchasing our swag. You can go to statuscoup.com/store, statuscoup.com/store for those. Thank you so much for watching. One more time, become a member at statuscoup.com/join. I'd love to see more membership signups before I head to Florida to cover these important stories. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.